So in the last video, I talked about my top 4 favorite anime of all time. Each spot is listed there for various reasons. It's how much I like a show and how much of an impact it had on me as a person. While I went over why Frieren has a strong case to be number 5 on that list, there is another show in contention, which funnily enough is also fantasy. I introduced to you all Delicious in Dungeon or Dungeon Mechi, one of the biggest surprises to come out of 2024.
I kind of went with the minimalistic font with the four notches.
So if you're unfamiliar, the show was animated by Studio Trigger. They produced hits like Kill la Kill, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, Little Witch Academia, etc. It's also a Netflix exclusive, so the only reason I found out about this show so early was because Netflix recommended it to me. Seeing the pedigree and the premise, I decided to give it a shot, despite the fact that I knew next to nothing about this show prior. It still showed a lot of promise barring that fact. So going into it blind, I was a blank slate looking to see what it had to offer. Now with me having finished it and rewatched it, let me give you all the basic rundown.
Yucks, what is this disgusting place? It's stink of poo-poo and stinkies.
So I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but the plot goes as follows. Our party consists of 6 people: Laios, Fallon, Marcel, Chilchuck, Shuro, and Namari. They are all in a dungeon fighting a red dragon. The red dragon's pretty infamous, so it's not an easy fight, and we see that immediately because they lose horrifically. The only reason they're able to escape is because of Laios' sister, Fallon. She sacrifices herself and teleports them out of the dungeon. So now, with Fallon gone missing, Laios, Marcel, and Chilchuck want to go back to look for her, while Shuro and Namari are opposed to this and leave their group. So with their squad cut in half, their situation is looking wicked. But through blessings unimaginable, they meet Senshi, a dwarf who lives in the dungeon. He joins them because he knows how to cook monster food, something that they need because they're extremely broke. So for the next 11 or so episodes, we see the group descend the dungeon looking for Fallon and learning with Senshi about monsters in the dungeon. Along the way, they meet all sorts of characters like orcs, monsters, and even Namari with her new party. Once they make it back to the dragon though, the rematch ensues. The 4 of them have to kill the dragon and rescue Fallon, who was eaten by it. Once they do, however, the reality they didn't want to acknowledge sets in. Fallon has long since been digested by the dragon. Marcel, being the spellcaster, has knowledge of dark magic, which I want to add is extremely forbidden in this universe, but to save her best friend, she'll do it by any means. So they manage to revive Fallon using dragon meat, dragon blood, and the remains of Fallon's bones. It works, but with a caveat. The dungeon is controlled by the Mad Mage. They're the reason it even exists. The Mad Mage took control of Fallon because the Mad Mage also controlled the Red Dragon, which are now intrinsically fused together. So the group decides to head back up to the surface and regroup, but are intercepted by Shuro and Kabru's groups. Shuro has his retainers, while Kabru has his party. They all exchange information, with the dark arts used to revive Fallon coming to light thanks to Laios. Shuro and Kabru decide to go back up to tell the Island Lord, but when Fallon attacks them, they actually reconsider and decide that they believe in Laios and their party to save her. So they still return to the surface, but they're gonna withhold that information for the Island Lord at their meeting. Now with their morale and resources replenished, the group resumes their journey. Their goal is to find the Mad Mage and free Fallon from his grasp. We come to find out that one of Shuro's retainers actually got left behind and is now stuck in the dungeon, so they take her into their care. Her name is Izutsumi and she's a beastman, a cat and a human mix specifically. As Laios' group descends, however, they go through more encounters, monsters, and lore. For instance, I didn't explain the dungeon lore. This dungeon was once a castle, with the Mad Mage themselves once being a retainer for the king. The kingdom fell to ruin, however, because of the Mad Mage themselves. The whole reason this dungeon was discovered was because of the remnants of the king that got to the surface and pleaded for help before disintegrating completely. So the group manages to find a village that houses the ghosts of the kingdom's residents. Here they explain the lore that Laios might be the chosen one, and to confirm that, they have to go down further to find the winged lion for help. After that, they can defeat the mage and save Fallon. Now armed with more knowledge, they make their way down the dungeon. They speculate how they're going to save Fallon and the implications of everything they're done as they take a trolley down deeper into the dungeon. And with that, that marks the end of the plot for season 1. I skimmed through a lot for this summary, so it isn't exhaustive, but it'll catch you up for the most part if you want to watch season 2 or if you just want to watch the show. If you want to learn more, however, I would generally just recommend watching the show on Netflix. With that being said though, let me give you all my thoughts.
Let me tell you about my brother.
Wake up, Nezuko.
Man, let me tell you about my brother.
So this show on the surface is a cooking show, but underneath that there is significantly more than just that. For every meal, there's the dungeon and the monsters that inhabit it, the ecosystem of said dungeon, the journey to making the food, the party themselves, and the lore of everything here. It seems simple, but a lot of thought went into this world and the lore of it. One of my favorite episodes being episode 3, Living Armor. The whole gist is that the crew finds an area with living armor in it, which is magically animated suits of armor that they have to defeat to get past. But the twist is, they actually aren't magic at all. There are creatures controlling the armor. So Laios, being the designated monster encyclopedia, defeats their leader and gets a reward, Kensuke, which is a sword that he named, which has a scallop in it. While on the surface it seems simple, the process was enjoyable and entertaining in my opinion. I was locked in watching a guy with a monster complex fight scallops, and I loved every second of it. It also helps that this episode was animated beautifully by Studio Trigger, giving us this scene right here. Laios, Fallon, and their dog running. This 15-second segment broke me. While it's played for laughs, which it did crack me up the first time I watched it, the second time, however, I almost cried. And the reason is because with the added context of what happens to Fallon, especially in the second half of the season, it was wholesome, but it was also a cold reminder of who they're doing this for and what might happen if they don't get to her in time. This is Laios' sister and Marcel's best friend. They love her dearly and will do anything for her, as we see with the dark magic. So while this 15-second segment doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things, it encapsulates so much in terms of what Fallon means to these two. Best part too is that there's moments like this throughout the entire show. Side characters, monsters, the main party, and areas in the dungeon get characterized to where you care for them, understand their motivations, or want to learn more about the area. Like the orcs, the ghost villagers, the scallops, elves, Namari's group, etc. These people all have different motivations and reasons to be there. On a different note, however, the main cast themselves is great. While Laios, Marcel, and Chilchuk have the benefit of being familiar with each other, they aren't family, they're just traveling together. So this journey gives us a look at not just Senshi, but all 5 of these people together. We see them really grow as people and learn to trust in their party members, to the point where they're a well-oiled machine by the end of the season. Every one of the main 5 were great and really grew on me the more I watched the show. Izutsumi joined late, so I still have to see more of her, but she fits in the party great so far. The crew's starting to really feel like a family the same way the Straw Hat Pirates do in One Piece in my opinion. The English dub voice acting can be really great or a miss sometimes. I enjoyed my time with it, however, I can still recommend it to people, and I'm going to watch season 2 in dub as well. The music was surprisingly good, especially when the show would get serious. I'm gonna have to look into it because these composers were elite on the stove. Like I mentioned before, the animation is elite, and I'm not gonna go over it much more, especially because I'm a Studio Trigger glazer, so it's not gonna be anything constructive. The creativity in this show was super fun to see too. The way they used monster food in different ways was clever and fun, keeping that aspect refreshing. Like the ghost gelato, for example, that was really clever in my opinion. And one final point, while the story is lighthearted most of the time, it gets serious when it needs to, and I appreciate this a lot because it shows respect from the author. It's okay to have fun, but when it's time to lock in, you gotta take it seriously. It shows an understanding of the characters and the situation that they're placed in. The best example is how seriously the dark magic was treated by Shiro, Kabru, and Laios' group. The severity of the deed really brings it home for the viewer, and just how much trouble Marcel and the whole group is going to be in once they go back to the surface. This is a no going back scenario, and they understand that fully. Character moments like that make a simple story complex. While having more characters artificially adds to the story's depth, that doesn't mean that it makes it automatically interesting or engaging, which I think this show does pretty well. Overall though, this show was a 9 for me. I really enjoy my time with it, and I'm glad that I took a chance. The happiness, the giddiness, the joy, the sadness, and laughter I experienced were one of a kind, to the point where I rewatched this show just for this video, because I just wanted to. I can't recommend this show enough if you haven't watched it. It's genuinely amazing. I believe this show to be my number 5, but at some point in the future I want to make my top 10 list, and just list out all the shows that I think are in there. And for the Frieren fans, Frieren is number 6, so don't worry. It's still on there. Let me know what you all think about this show. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know your thoughts. As for me, that's going to be it for me for now. Thank y'all for watching as always. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. If not, then I thank you for watching regardless. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and until next time, this has been Infamous Isaac, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.
Make sure we get rebounds and pass the ball to Duke Dennis. What the fuck? No.